wonder what that guy. Do you think that guy didn't like Facebook because how police are treated on Facebook? Like the way the police are treated on Facebook.
The guy who's just here?
Yeah.
I wasn't listening to the show, to be honest.
No, but he said that not the show, but like before he was like, yeah, I don't even want Facebook. I don't like Facebook.
Oh.
Harry, once you set it up, I can watch it if you want to do something, whatever you want to do.
Alright, buddy. Thanks for reading my story. I got someone there, yes. Hey, man. I got what going on right here.
Cool, you are all set up.
Hey, the man's here. What's going on? What's the press conference about? Yeah, no, they did make less money for 13-year-olds, but they, but with 15-year-olds, shut up. But they, at press conference, they released this booklet, no police there, on what's the emergency immigration. How you doing, sir? Hopefully you can join us today.
I could run the boards if you want.
No, I got the board.
Oh yeah, I got it.
But if you can get John's cell phone, put it on his Facebook.
Got it. You want me to take yours too?
No, I'll do that. Because yesterday you put it on my independent account instead of mine.
Oh.
Because it's a little tricky, and it's not your fault. On my phone, it first goes to...
I know how to do that.
Yeah.
I just didn't realize that.
That's okay, because they took a while for me to get it back. Yeah, a lot of things do it once. We're good.
Cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, that changes everything. The whole sharing thing.
Yeah, it really does. Like, it's too bad that Brantford cop didn't want to go on Facebook Live. Now I feel like if it's not on Facebook Live, no one's going to see it.
It just depends how we promote it. You got to put it on like Twitter. Who has the Twitter?
I don't know. We don't get big on Twitter.
That's because no one's used it. Yeah. That's where everyone is though.
Yeah.
Twitter is really popular, especially for news in today's world. That's where a lot of journalists do their work.
Do you want me to save this legal thing, guys?
Fake news. Just leave it there.
You say a lot of fake news?
A lot of fake news.
Also known as liberal news.
Right.
How was the Brantford one?
That was good. It was really interesting.
He's a good man.
I just can't imagine how bad like the Brantford crime scene must be. I was like, China, because Guildford's like just heart attacks. People.
It's more than Guildford, but not like New Haven. Yeah.
The most police activity I've seen in Guildford is when I turn off my security alarm in my house and they come by accident.
Am I on camera?
Yeah, but let me say, yeah.
Are you getting this thing to roll at 11?
Yep. What do you mean? Hold on, I'm trying to help you out. I want the people to see you.
Hey, John, can you surrender your phone to him?
Yeah.
And all other valuables?
You have a Facebook?
No, I don't.
Oh, never mind.
I don't do Facebook.
Do you have a Twitter?
No.
Oh, never mind.
Social media.
That's smart.
Never mind. You don't need to surrender that.
Oh.
Just your keys.
So not being on social
Keys?
Just teasing you.
Oh. I trust you.
I would go, right?
You tell me what to surrender.
They look like nice keys.
How are you, John?
I wish I could.
Good.
So much going on, man.
Nothing. We were in session until 8:30 last night.
Wow.
And then we're back in Sunday and Monday.
Cool.
So what did they give you today? They gave you a book on emergency preparedness?
Yeah, the city's been working on it. Every department was there but the police.
Because they're all
That
like,
looks terrible.
can I see this one?
The thing is,
I need it.
You know
Oh, yeah.
what's annoying about that to me is that I got denied going to the FBI by Lewis because I was running narcotics. He said you can't go. And then I was set to go in the beginning of 2011, and Lamone pulled me out because we had 5 homicides in January. You know what I mean, Harry? They're doing it because I'm white. That's what it is. That's exactly right.
But it's not that he's there, it's that the other two are gone too.
Well, the thing is, Anthony's at perf.
We'll talk
Louis
about. We'll talk on the air. Yeah.
Oh, I don't want to talk about that.
Got to talk about that's the biggest thing right now.
What,
City's falling apart, and none of the cops are here.
Oh, Christ.
They're all on vacation. I don't know that. Where's Casanova?
At a training. They're all training different cities.
I saw him like 2 weeks ago.
There's
Well,
no.
Tony, you can't really jump on.
No, you can't. That was planned for a
That
year.
was planned for a
That's paid for. No, it's the chief plans to have all three of them gone at once.
I'm gonna take a beating for this one again. Get beat up every time I come on this show.
Yeah, but you also get to be a star.
I also go what?
To be a star.
Yeah, it's true.
To be a specialist.
To be a specialist. Well, today, if we're talking violent crime,
Yeah, what kind of specialist are you today? You're an expert in what?
I would say that, in all honesty, the really only thing I could claim expert status is in violent crime and narcotics.
How about policing?
Policing? Yeah, but violent crime.
But what bugs those guys at the bar most? To call you what? Policing or law enforcement? Or
expert in any.
Okay, so let's call you the expert. Okay.
You might want to use the other headphones. Those have been breaking.
Okay.
Go to studio.
No, I'm off. I'm on this.
Oh, sorry.
And
No with the studio.
and
Yeah.
they're gonna make an arrest on that 14.
What?
They have an idea on that 14-year-old shooter.
I thought it's the 13-year-old. They arrested someone this morning.
They have an idea on the kid who did the dancing.
Oh.
Don't say anything. They're waiting.
Hello and welcome to WNHH Radio's Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make New Haven tick. New Haven's WNHH's resident policing expert, retired Assistant Police Chief and current State Sergeant at Arms, John Valleca, helps make New Haven tick, and he's in the studio today to help us run down some of the recent criminal justice developments. I see there's a lot of news happening as we speak at this hour in New Haven. So it's really great to have John here. We also have WNHA studio manager and previous man in New Haven, Donald Trump fan, Harry Drost. Harry, thanks for coming in as well. John, how are you doing, sir? Doing all right? Say hello to our studio audience.
Hello, it's good to be here.
And John, a lot's happening at this hour. It's 11 a.m. on Tuesday, unless you're listening to a rebroadcast of this. At this very hour, it's just at City Hall, where they released a new booklet on family, immigration, emergency preparedness. All the agencies in the city work together there. You had the school board, you had the school board, you had the health department, you had community service administration, you had the community foundation, you had the housing authority, you had everyone but the police chiefs at this press conference announcing that this new book that the city's putting out to help undocumented families and people who work with undocumented families prepare for if there are raids and deportation. As we've seen in the city right now, we have one woman being deported to Guatemala who's taking refuge in a city church. Meanwhile, at this hour, I'm told, the police have arrested someone in New Hallville who's going to be accused of shooting a 14-year-old boy in the leg this past weekend, one of two shootings of teenagers that have the neighborhood really upset. And also at this hour, the funeral is beginning for Tyreek Keys, a 14-year-old boy who was shot dead on the streets of New Hallville, that succumbed to the wounds last week. And I know the police are out there in force because there's always concerns at these funerals that there may be retaliation. So, John Valleca, a lot to talk about. What are you hearing about now? They have not yet arrested anyone in the killing of 14-year-old Tyreek Keys, and you can't talk about that. You know, I've just been wondering what's happening with our vaunted, supposedly community policing effort if we don't know who killed him. I'm told that when he was shot on the street, it had something to do with an argument that was going on with a group of teenagers in New Hallville and a group of teenagers elsewhere in town off of exit 8 of I-91. They'd been a teen party in East Haven. There had been some kind of argument, and it kept on social media. And that even though the police said this guy was targeted, I'm hearing he might not have been targeted. He might have been with the person that night whom they're actually looking for. Are you hearing anything like that?
No, I haven't heard any details outside of what I read in the media.
Are you concerned that there's been no arrests yet?
No, I mean, you know, we've been down this road, Paul, for over 10 years, you and I.
You got to make a good case.
Yeah, I would be surprised if they don't make an arrest on it. You know what I mean? I know the detectives working the case, and I'm sure these things just take time. They take time to develop, and sometimes they may be further along and they want to.
Right, because you don't want to blow a case by getting information out.
So
what about, because it was the mother who told us the thing about social media and all that kind of stuff. What about what the public should know? So even though violent crime is way down in New Haven from where it was when you started tackling some of the roots of this problem, when you were at the force, it's steadily gone down. It's continued to go down last year. This is the first murder in New Hallville this year. We obviously want none, but we had 3 at this point last year. But yet, when something has happened, it freaks people out. A teenager on the street. And then all the police said was he was targeted. So that immediately sounds like they're blaming him for being in the life. It turns out he might not have been in the life. On the other hand, they didn't want to release more information that makes him look bad because then they'll be accused of maligning the kid. But then a second, apparently unrelated, shooting happens of a 13-year-old a week later in the leg. But what should the public been saying? We've been seeing nothing from the police department. The chief of police is in Boston at a training session. The assistant chief of police, Luis Casanova, he has a lot of this stuff. He's been in a training session in Boston. The head of patrol, Assistant Chief Reyes, a long plan for years, in a 10-week training session in Virginia. And Archie Generoso, the other assistant chief, is in charge. We have not seen his face in public. They don't release anything because they have understandable fears of not wanting to jeopardize investigation. We've just seen the chief of police in Minnesota leave because she was not, Minneapolis, not keeping the public aware when they're upset and knowing what goes on. How do you balance that? Is there a way for the, I mean, what we get is we get quotes from the police chief from out of state saying we care about this a lot and we're not going to stand for it. Big whoop. I mean, what is the community supposed to know and what are we supposed to see from our police department?
Well, I think that this, this might be a byproduct of having a young chief. He's still learning the ropes there. These are the things, you can't really put this on Archie Generoso or Louis Casanova or Tony Reyes.
But why isn't Archie out there talking to people?
Well, you know what? I can't answer for that. That may be a better question posed to Archie. I mean, it's on the individual. I guess, when we were there.
Well, the mayor was on the radio yesterday. He said Archie feels he's not going to be accepted and credible in the community going out and speak to them. I don't know if that's because he's white or he doesn't have those relationships. I don't know. Yeah, so, that's on Assistant Chief Generoso. If that's his, if that's why he's saying he's not out there, then that's why he's not out there. I can't tell you. What should a police department be doing now? When you were acting chief and assistant chief, you often had information you couldn't release because an investigation was pending. But you always went out and talked about the case. You gave more information than other people were comfortable with because you wanted to let people know something was going on. How do you walk that line? What should a chief do? Well,
I think that I had the benefit of being a detective and spending a lot of time in the detective division. I think that when you know what you can release and what you can't release through prior experience, I think that you can open the door for releasing more because as a detective, I know
what do you think could be released in this case?
Well, I don't know the details of it, so that's very.
I'm not getting this from the police. I'm getting it from the community. There was this dispute between two groups. I'm getting that there's someone, I don't know if it's true, that he wasn't. They said he was targeted. I'm hearing you, but also not from the police. I'm hearing he was targeted in a sense of, he was with them, which is a different kind of targeted.
So we don't want to let details out, okay? Obviously, we know that. We've been down this road for a long time. But there are certain details that get out immediately, right? And then that are redundant, that keep coming up. So they're just about confirmed, right? And those are the details you got to kind of assess and you say, okay, everybody's saying this is what's out there.
So the detectives are understandably worried that anything they say jeopardizes it, and I really feel for them because they want to want to solve the case.
And I see that
they're saying we want to solve the case,
but that's not the case. So that's truly not the case. From a detective, I've held every position in the detective division you can hold. There are things that we can let out. Every detail that comes out is not going to jeopardize your case. It's not going to ruin your case, and sometimes it's a small detail that puts the community at ease. Now,
the other side of the coin is you're afraid either you're going to interview someone who doesn't know what information you have, and you need to have that advantage in the interview.
So you have to weigh that out, right? So when these things happen, there's a 14-year-old kid, he gets shot down on the street. Unfortunately, he's a victim of violent crime. He's murdered. What do we want the community to know? Well, we come out and we say immediately, if we can pinpoint and say, listen, this is not an arbitrary shooting. In other words, you don't have to worry about coming.
And that's what they did. They said he was targeted. But then that sounds like he's in a drug gang, which I'm told he wasn't.
Well, I think sometimes it's a matter of choosing the right words. Targeted may not be the best word. Maybe say, this is something that was specific to the people involved in this crime. Not necessarily.
This was a dispute.
Right, it was a dispute.
Yeah.
And
is it better to say he was involved in a dispute rather than he was targeted, or does it not matter?
I think what I used to say was this is not an arbitrary act of violence. This is not something that was just because what I felt when I was there was that when we had shootings like this in New Hallville or the Hill or the Tray or places like that, people will harken back to the days where there were arbitrary shootings, where people would just drive through the neighborhood.
So the department did get that word out.
Right.
Do you think they got it out right by saying targeted and nothing else?
You know, I think that the general gist of what they're saying got out there. Maybe they could have chosen better words. Of course, you can, you know, hindsight is always 20/20. When
Anything else they should be saying?
You know, without knowing the details of the case, it's hard for me to say that. Sometimes you and I, like I said, we had a good relationship. We went back. I gave a lot more than, and listen, my detectives used to hate me for giving.
I know they did. Did it ever blow a case?
It never blew a case. There was never a case that was ever jeopardized by what we put out. Now, there are times when, you know, Annie Lee is a great case, right? We didn't put anything out because everything was so ambiguous at that time.
That was the Yale grad student who was strangled to death and shoved inside
the duct air conditioning. But we couldn't put anything out, right? So some of these.
But the police chief was out in public talking about that continually.
Absolutely, and listen, like I say, growing pains. I'll give Anthony the benefit of the doubt. He's going to have to learn. He's got to get out there. People need to see the chief of police. They need to see his face, and that's something that I'm sure he's going to learn after this. Mm-hmm. But you know, and listen, what have we been saying about Anthony Kimball? What's the best part about Anthony Kimball? Why is he a chief? Because he has a calming effect, right? He has that personality, he has that way to be. These are the times.
Does he have it when he calls in a quotation that says nothing?
this is when we need him, right? This is when we need a guy like him to be out there, taking everybody down a notch, calming everybody down, and ensuring everybody that the police department is there working the case, which they are. Which they are. Believe me when I tell you.
But what if he can't say anything? Does it matter? You're saying the police might decide they can't say anything. So what did Jim Lewis do when he was chief during Annie Lee? He was out there. The public was reassured. Right. What is it that when you have no information to give, how should the police chief go out, or should he give some information?
Well, I think that if you sit down with everybody involved and you really don't have any information to give, there's nothing wrong with going out there and saying we can't give you any information now, but you have to back that up with why we can't give any information right now and be very.
But it's always a generic. It'll, which is true. It could jeopardize. But anything could jeopardize. Because the chief, isn't he always going to be in a room with people saying don't give information, even when that's not necessarily a good idea?
I tell you, Chief Lewis used to ask me, and Chief Wheeler and Lamone, for that matter, used to ask me, "What can I give out?" We're not giving what.
So they say, ask, "What can I give out?"
Right, and the question was always, "What can I send out here that's not going to jeopardize?" And then, even if I would say, "Listen, I want to put this out because it's going to jeopardize the case," Wheeler was always a person to say, "Well, how so?" And
so now,
case.
Chief Campbell is at a 3-week training session, which we want our chiefs and assistant chiefs to be trained to do their job better. He's at a 3 Police Executive Research Forum PERF training session.
Right.
So is his assistant chief, Lou Casanova. While their other assistant chief patrol, Tony Reyes, for a whole year has been planning to go to this terrific executive 10-week course the FBI gives in Quantico.
Right.
Should the chief make sure that only one has gone at a time?
I think that they probably could have scheduled the PERF a little bit more. I think there's not a lot you can do with the FBI Academy. Listen, that's set in place for a year, and you know, there's a lot of money involved with sending our people there, and a lot of money put up by the FBI there. So, you know, it's almost impossible to pull yourself out of that. However, PERF, you know, maybe you could have scheduled that a little bit better, but I don't want to be critical. You know, that's their thing.
So you're not critical. You think that's okay to have the 3 top cops of the city gone when not only this is happening, but the city's in the national media for having a sanctuary church housing, and there are hundreds of people demonstrating, and we're running if ICE is coming in to raid them.
No, I think it is a mistake, but I also think it's a mistake by somebody who we've already committed ourselves to. We know he's a young chief. We know he's going to have to learn the job, and this is going to be, you know, this is a learning experience, and I wouldn't expect him to make the same mistake again. But you know, when we were looking for a chief, right, we knew we committed ourselves to staying within our department, and we knew that we had some inexperience there rather. We need to stick with our guys and let them grow.
So you say give them a break and let them grow.
Right, and let them learn from their mistakes. Listen, these are not a seasoned chief who's been down this road before. Of course, you won't see a Jim Lewis, you know, out of town. Of course not. He's been, you know, chief of 4 different departments. He's been through this before. He knows that he's supposed to be here.
But what about now we have 2? Would any one of these cases? Because you're always going to have something happen when you're out of town. Is this a matter of not scheduling all your top people away at once without leaving it to the department in the hands of someone who feels they can't go out and speak to the public, or is it a matter of coming home? That was like Sunday night. There was a vigil of 200 people in Fairhaven about the woman being holed up in the church. And Lou Casanova, one of the assistant chiefs, drove down from Boston to be at it and then went back up.
Okay. Yeah. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, I got to say that I think the chief should be there. You know, like I said, I can only speak from my own personal opinion, and like I say, we've been through this for over decades.
But what's the threshold? Is it if one major event happens, two major events happen? We have two big deal events happening right now.
I think that as the chief of police, you should know the culture of your department and your city. You know what's a big event and what's not a big event. You know, and I think that likening back to say Frank Lamone, right? I think that's where he kind of dropped the ball a little bit, because a lot of the things that he was used to in Chicago, wouldn't be big events, but they took place here in New Haven. They were big events, and he was absent for a lot of those.
And the big event here is that you're listening to Dateline New Haven on WNHH Radio. Our guest today is our resident policing expert, retired Assistant Police Chief and current State Senate Sergeant at Arms, John Valecka. We also got Harry Droz. Harry, what were you thinking when this was all going on and we don't have top cops around? Do you care about that at all? Or is that just show? Is that just a circus that the media pays too much attention to?
Yeah, I think it's a media thing, and also, I mean, Anthony could give orders from wherever he's at, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's always the people who criticize the president when he's on a plane or something flying somewhere, as if they aren't able to do their jobs remotely.
But doesn't he always have a vice president in charge if something happens, if that plane goes down?
Yes, and you still have some people here. It's just, I think the media always overreacts. It's just like the targeting thing. I think you're just looking for the proper words, because he was targeted anyway. Even if it was because there was a prior incident
with somebody else, he was with them.
It doesn't matter. He was targeted. Now we're always trying to find the right.
But it sounds like they're coming looking for him.
Light, so.
Yeah. Okay. And so, are these two big deals? Is this a big deal that counting in New Haven?
Yeah, sure.
Because you know what got me is that so what happened was last Thursday there was a woman from Norwalk, not New Haven, Nuri Chavarria. I hope I'm saying that right. I'm probably not. She's 43 years old. She works at a house cleaning company. She's been here 24 years from Guatemala. She left where she was scared in her village. She'd been run out of her home from war there, U.S. back war that started. She has 4 kids, single mom. She's risen in the ranks of her business, where she actually supervises other house cleaners. And every year she got a stay, and she always showed up for her appointments with ICE because she was here without permission. And now they, under President Obama, who did increase deportations, by the way. Immigrant rights people leave that out. Obama deported more people than anyone ever before him, any president ever. But he did say if someone's not a violent criminal or someone who's breaking laws and just working here, we have 10 to 11 million in the country, we're not going to focus on them. We're going to focus on the people who are posing a public threat.
20 to 40 million.
Yeah, Donald Trump said he was going to do that too, but in fact the opposite has happened. ICE has new rules. They're supposed to get everybody any way they can, and 40% increase in who they're deporting. So this woman's a classic case. And Harry, you can't deny this. This is a woman who under Obama would not have been deported, and they said we're not going to give you permission again under new rules.
And I guarantee under Obama it wouldn't be in the media.
But in any case,
so you just said that Obama increased deportations. Are you telling me he only deported criminals?
I'm saying that they had.
It's just you never saw it in.
No, but the ICE agents were upset because they had a directive to only go after criminals. They were upset about that, and the reason they wanted Trump was because he said the opposite, and he did the opposite.
No, now. If they were going after criminals under Obama, you wouldn't have all these sanctuary cities, hiding these criminals and not reporting them to.
But what about
Obama.
This case, Harry? This was different.
This case itself, I feel bad for the lady, but because they say they're focused on criminals doesn't mean that they don't do the
Okay, but in any case, she wasn't deported on Obama. She was deported under them. It was all under the same rules.
Right, but I'm saying a focus on criminals doesn't mean that when you run across.
Right, but they go out, but they're looking for her. They didn't run across her while busting some gangbanger. Yeah, they did.
They just, what they did, they did like.
She came for the same appointment. No, she went to the same appointment she went to every year. They said now our policy has changed. They said our policy has changed under the new president, so you're gone. You haven't been gone for 24 years. You're gone now. She pays taxes. She is law-abiding citizen.
The same appointment.
She did.
And what appointment was that?
Asking for a stay.
Asking for a stay.
They told her to show.
That's not targeting, Paul. This is what I'm saying.
But I'm saying it's a policy change.
A policy change, yes.
About people who are not posing any. She's part of the 10 million who are posing no threat to the country.
The government, the law, has the right to get rid of these people.
Sure, they have the right. We're saying, is it a smart way of doing things in this country? She's got 4 kids. One of them's got cerebral palsy.
Actually, I didn't raid her apartment or anything like that, right? That's targeting. She showed up. They said the policy changed. You got to go.
Right, so we have a policy change. So what do you think about the policy change, John Valecki? You've been in law enforcement.
Yeah, I've taken a stand. I don't agree with that at all, and I don't think that. I don't think she should have to be deported, to be quite honest with you. I said that goes back to what we've stood on here in New Haven for years, and outreach to that community, and then beating them back.
So now she's the first person to make use of New Haven's network of sanctuary houses of worship. So she's staying in a room with her 7-year-old daughter, not her other kids, on East Pearl Street at Iglesia de Dios, Pentecostal. And she's not going to leave the grounds, and ICE has a policy they won't go onto the grounds of a house of worship. So there's a standoff. We're wondering what ICE is going to do. What's the police department's role in this? Is this something that a chief or a higher profile assistant police chief who feels he can go out in public and talk to the community should be in town for?
Let's put it out there right now. Sure, Anthony Campbell should be here. Okay, I give you my reasons why I give him a pass. Okay, this is an issue that New Haven has been at the forefront for over 10 years now, right? We've drafted general orders, policies, or we've trained our officers to a certain regard. Now you have this actually coming to fruition. Something is going on. Chief of Police should be there. All right. I give Louis a lot of credit for coming back. All right. It's good that we put a face out there. But I think we should be up front in the middle of this, because we can't just be in the center of this when it's a campaign issue, right? We have to be in the center of this all the time. If we're going to subscribe to this.
Are you concerned about the relationship between Immigration Customs Enforcement, ICE, and local police?
I don't think so.
10 years ago, there was tension. So ICE, I read the emails that came out through Freedom of Information. ICE was very hostile toward New Haven. They felt they were sort of an enemy government. And they were very mad we had passed an immigrant-friendly ID card that lets immigrants take out library books. So they came and they raided the city in retaliation. And they had memos of standing at these demonstrations out there and writing very hostile things about New Haven. What do you think's going on now?
Listen, I think at one point I told you there was a couple times I was a shift commander when I was shift commander patrol, and I came in. I think that animosity, that friction, was above most of the people actually do the work. My officers didn't feel any problems with ICE, and ICE came into our department and said, "Well, we work together." What happened at the the upper ends of the executive level of the administration is different from what goes on with the people who are actually on the ground doing the work. I've never had any friction from any federal agency.
Do you think ICE will make a move? So basically, the immigrant rights activists in New Haven are making this a test case.
Right.
So this woman, Nuri, has been on they've had it on Good Morning America, NBC Nightly News National, spent 2 hours with her. She's, of course, been on the local media. I had people seeing this in Minnesota. People saw this in Florida. There are 13 undocumented immigrants who were supposed to have left the country who are staying in houses of worship in the country. It seems like this one's getting the attention.
Correct.
What is that going to mean for New Haven? Do you think the Trump administration is going to take a stand here, try to snag her?
I don't know. I know that as far as the police department is concerned, I'm sure that they're not going to get involved anyway to assist, but I'm sure they're not going to get in the way either. They're going to do what they're bound to do by law, and they're going to stay within the policies and the protocols, because they know what their policies and protocols are with regard to these situations, and they're going to stick by it.
What if she has an ankle bracelet? What if by accident she's not on the grounds and there are police around and ICE around? What's going to happen?
As far as
this is theoretical. It's ridiculous theoretical.
An ankle bracelet.
The ICE knows where she is.
Right. Okay.
So if she leaves those grounds for 5 minutes, ICE is going to know where she is.
Right. And if ICE pulls in and picks her up, if you're asking me whether the New Haven Police Department is going to intervene and stop that, that's not going to be the case. I can assure you that that's not going to be the case.
Okay. So you're not worried at all about that relationship?
I'm not worried about what, a lot of stuff gets done by the people who are not, instead rather by the people who are not out there doing the work.
But sometimes I feel bad for the people doing the work, the police officers or the federal agents on the ground,
and
because they are following dictates from people above them, and they're being put at odds even if they don't feel that way.
And they know that. Okay. And the thing is that the people on the scene that are taking orders, we all know that we're taking orders, right? So the ICE agents there and the police there, they're indifferent to their personal opinions because they're taking direction. And they know that. And I give them a lot of credit. There's a lot of discipline involved in that. And they work together. They work well. They work fine.
So John and Harry, if this woman's deported, now lawyers are still trying to, and now U.S. senators are trying to get this woman permission to stay in the country. Do you think they'll succeed in doing that so that the federal government could save face? Or do you think both sides are going to harden and we're going to have some kind of showdown? I'm guessing she can't live. She's not going to live there for years.
Let me just say, I think the New Haven police should just stay away from this. Let ICE do whatever it's going to do. If she steps off the grounds, so be it. Snatch her up. Now, I do think that some judge somewhere.
So you think she should be?
somehow
You think she should be deported?
No, yeah.
You said
I have
snatch her
mixed
up.
feelings here.
Okay.
I have mixed
We just
feelings.
said snatch her up.
I said, if they decide to snatch her up, snatch her up. I'm not saying I decide. But I have mixed feelings. She has a family here. She has roots here.
What are we proving by doing that? Honestly, what are we proving by taking her? And
Well, like for instance,
No, no,
Department of
no,
Children
no,
and Families
I have
has
mixed
20
feelings about this,
today.
but-
Yeah, you'll want to know today. Joette Cass, the head of Department of Children and Families, was just at City Hall where they had the press conference about the handbook. Said we have 22,000 kids in this state who are legal residents who are children of undocumented immigrants. They now, I think, have like 4,000 kids in custody. If these people get deported, all of a sudden DCF is going to be spending all this money. There's going to be all this trauma and families broken apart. Like, how are they suddenly going to handle 26,000? There are all these costs associated with removing these people. Do you see a benefit in removing someone like Nuri Chavarria?
Saying that DCF is going to spend a lot of money. They're spending a lot of money anyway.
But they're not involved in these cases as long as the parents there and the kids
No,
are in a good home.
That's not true. The parents aren't allowed to be on, state assistance, but the child is. So don't think that these children.
This was a working mom. She's not a state assistant.
Well, she may not be.
So I'm saying that there are a lot of them who are
But
working.
There's a lot of them who are. The children are on state assistance.
But that doesn't
but
change if the parent gets pulled. If the parent gets pulled, all that happens is you now have no parent there, and there are going to be costs associated with caring for thousands of kids.
And you're worried about that.
That's not my main worry. I'm just saying
Right,
the people
but
are worried
I'm
about the
saying that-
cost
I'm
of
saying
illegal
people
immigration.
decide that they're worrying about
Come on,
certain
leave
things.
this woman alone. Really,
No,
honestly,
no,
we don't
no,
have
but
we don't have
not
better
the-
things
No,
to
not
do.
the woman.
Well, then what about what John says? What about what John just said?
Well, I do think we have better things to do. I don't think there should be anybody, going after this lady personally, but the law is the law. So I'm saying I support ICE because they're doing their job. Now, if they decide to turn their back and go focus their attention on some gangsters, I'm fine with that too.
But you got to admit that that's the line they always give. You're making America unsafe because you're not letting us go after the gangsters. Even the policy always allowed them to. When the vast majority of immigrants who are not causing, undocumented immigrants who are not causing a problem, are not committing crimes, who are contributing to our communities, they are now, like this woman, Nuri Chavarria, they are now
I get
deporting them.
But they still are here illegally. So that's the problem. The ICE is just doing their job.
I don't think
I
anybody.
support
I don't
ICE.
think that. I'm not arguing against ICE and them doing their job. I'm surely not against the agents and the people who are working. They have a job to do. I understand.
Right,
that.
and so for me, everybody should be upset with their lawmakers. You go and make something happen in Congress, in the Senate, because all this local strife that everybody's having is all because Washington can't get their crap together.
I think all sides agree with that.
I don't even
that's-
get going.
that's where
This is-
everybody should
The
be.
strife is because you elected this guy who
Not
ran,
this guy.
ran on this platform to
No, wait,
do
wait.
this.
Not this guy.
That's right. No one,
No,
Harry,
that's
this was
wrong.
on the
That's
table.
wrong. It's not this guy.
Who is it?
The
then?
laws exist.
But he's
Okay.
saying a lot of laws exist.
There's
No,
a ton
There's
of
a
but-
marijuana
no,
laws
but
that
here's the thing.
exist.
We can't have laws that say, well, depending on the president, we're going to ignore them.
No, but John,
If you
he's
want-
right.
If you
John,
want to change, you change the laws.
but
And
John,
your
everyone
lawmakers
agrees
are
with that,
willing to
Harry.
change
But
those
John
laws.
pointed out we elected someone who said he's going to do this, and it wasn't being done before. Just like they're going to pick a
Right.
fight on marijuana,
So
you can decide to
so
pick
why-
that.
so
up.
Obama decided to ignore the law instead of changing the law. That's what I'm talking about.
How is he
gonna change the
law
Don't
with all
blame
these nuts
Trump
in
for
Congress?
following the law.
By your rationale, every time you get pulled over for speeding, you should be getting a ticket. You should never get a break because that's the law. Where there's no room for discretion, there's no room for us to figure out what's right with the law in every specific spot, right? So in other words, here's the law. And we have a woman that's doing nothing. And we're going to get rid of her. We don't but we can't use our brains and
Once
figure
again,
out
I don't
how
want
to
to get rid of the
enforce.
woman.
No, but what I'm saying to you
But what he's saying,
that
Harry,
laws-
is that
there's
you don't-
always room for
there's always
discretion in
discretion.
enforcing laws.
There's always room for discretion, right? But here's the problem. This is a totally different issue because we're trying to apply U.S. citizen laws with somebody who's not a citizen. So you say the speeding ticket,
Right.
We're operating within American laws with an American.
So
There's still discretion.
So talk about laws for a minute. And here's what I would say to my officers always work for me. Before you enforce a law, what's the end game? What are you trying to do by enforcing that law? right? Speeding. What do we try to do when we enforce
Boy, I
speed
wish they
laws?
still had that talk in the New Haven Police Department now, instead of
What
arresting
are we
reporters.
trying to do? Wait.
I can tell you Trump's endgame, though.
Hear me out. You're speeding. We pull people over speeding. We're trying to control traffic, right? That's why we do that. When we're making arrests, when we're making drug arrests, right? We don't make low-level drug arrests because the law says you can't be in possession of narcotics. We make low-level drug arrests because there's an end game. There's a gang behind that. There's violence behind that. There's guns to be bought, right? So everything we do has got an end game to it. There's a reason why we're doing it. And sometimes, if we can't meet that end, we don't initiate the arrest in the beginning because it doesn't make any sense to do that. Do you understand?
I understand. And like I said, if ICE for me decided to walk away and concentrate on something,
You'd be okay with it.
I'm okay with it. But it's still the law. And this is Trump's endgame, right? And it's the Republicans' endgame. It's getting rid of the people who are basically an anchor to the system, because you say she's not on state assistance, right? But her kids use the public schools funded by federal government.
Harry, this is America, Harry. Come on.
It's America, right?
It is.
But you see, this is the thing, that America is for Americans.
It's not for the people who flee. Where do you?
Most Americans were not originally from America.
What happened?
Most Americans were not originally from America. America was
That's
built
not-
by
well, you
people
see,
who weren't
that's not the
Americans
point,
and made
but
another life.
But Americans who are in America now are Americans, right?
And we're all,
They're here.
and Americans and non-Americans alike, we're listening to Dateline New Haven at WNHH
Saying
Radio.
we're not originally from America means nothing,
Your home.
because we have immigration laws. If you want to change your home for community radio, if
At-
you want to change,
Where's it live streamed?
Huh?
Where's it live streamed? NewHavenIndependent.org.
Oh.
What's our frequency, Kenneth?
Yeah, I got that.
103.5 FM, and we're here with John
But
Valeka.
if you want
Before
to change
Assistant Police.
right off.
immigration
Not gonna
laws,
work.
it's a different thing. Vote in different people who are willing to change those laws. Not even Democrats are willing to change the immigration laws.
All
Because
right.
why do we need to change the law to dictate how? In other words, we have no brain. Because how do we figure out how to live every day? Let's find the law and find the directive in the book how to friggin' live every day. Come on.
That makes
Do
no
laws tell us?
That
Of
makes
course
no
it does.
sense.
Listen, laws are there to be interpreted. They're interpreted every day.
There are
by our
tons of
courts.
laws you can use. Any day, a cop can arrest 1,000 people for 1,000 offenses. He makes or she
Breach
makes
of peace, Harry.
choices.
Causing an annoyance and alarm. I mean, come on. We can make an arrest now.
I know.
I
Right?
mean,
Uh-oh, who's arresting whom?
but you know what I mean? It's like
I'm
really.
just threatening to arrest me. Anyway, listen. So here's my thing.
Enough with your First Amendment. You'll be under arrest.
Now, here's my thing. ICE was created for a reason, right? It's not like they could just say, well, we're not going to follow our mandate today. ICE is there for a reason. They're there to do their jobs. Their job is immigration.
Yeah, but I think that what we're being said, why now? ICE has been around forever, and they haven't done this. Now all of a sudden they're doing this.
Because
We're
somebody
focusing on-
said, let's follow the laws.
Wait, slow. Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
we got
Change the law.
we got the 2 points of view. So
We're
Harry
We're
Joe
going
says
to- we're going to Mr.
so Harry Joe says get
Nobody
rid of
wants to
Donald
understand
Trump and all
that
these Republicans so
you're-
we can change the law. We can't do that unless we get rid of all the people you like. We
That's
can't get rid of all
no,
of
that's
Sean
not true.
Hannity's followers. Then we can
That's not true.
change the
Paul,
law.
because when George Bush tried to do a comprehensive law, it was the Democrats that
Nope,
blocked
it was Jeff Sessions.
No, it was the Democrats that blocked George Bush from actually passing it.
But you know that the most
Immigration.
recent iteration, there was a bipartisan deal. John McCain, Lindsey Graham,
Yeah.
Democrats, and it was all your Sean Hannity people and Jeff Sessions and Trump people who elected Trump. They were the ones who killed the deal when there was a bipartisan. That's
It's
the
not
modern
the
era.
original deal.
I'm not talking about 20 years ago. I'm talking about now.
Yeah, but
Okay, last couple of years there was something on the table that was
See,
going
you
to
wanna
do it.
You want to do the now, except when it's convenient for you to go to the past to make your point.
I'm not defending Democrats. I'm saying right now we have a group of
Democrats are
Republicans
saying,
within the party who are making it
You know,
impossible.
forget all that. All I say is my stance is leave the lady alone. That's it. Let's be honest here. Leave the lady alone.
I agree with it.
What's going on here?
That's
Where
the-
are we at?
All right.
No, we're pulling all this other
Okay,
stuff.
leave the lady alone. We can move out. Should we be leaving Barbara Fair alone? Barbara Fair is an activist in New Haven who is very critical of the police. She and her members of her family have been arrested for a lot of offenses over the years and convicted of violence, drug dealing. She says they've been targeted. Other cases, they haven't done some of those things. It was more like breach of peace. She's been in the news twice with the police lately. One was a couple of Saturdays ago, there was a white supremacist group that did a recruiting event on the Green. Their speaker didn't show up. There's only 6 of them. 150 counter demonstrators showed up. Most of them very nonviolent. They were talking to them. They had directions to be nonviolent. But a couple of violent-prone left-wing demonstrators from out of town came and started attacking them, kicking them, hitting them, throwing paint balloons at them, and at the cops. And the cops shepherded these guys to safety. Separate from those 2 people, Barbara Fair was there, and she was actually having good conversation with the white boys, or what they call Proud Boys. But the police arrested her nephew. They said he was he was not following directions at a tense moment. Of all the video that day, we never captured kind of what happened there. And Barbara Fair, there's video, but there wasn't captured what happened at the key moment when the police said she wasn't obeying them. She's African American. The cops who ordered her arrest were African American. They arrested her for not following what they were saying at a tense moment and gave her breach of peace. Before we get to her second issue, do you think that's a case where police were in a tense moment, felt they had to maintain order, but might have, just like when they arrested our photographer, might have overreacted and said it's not so important to retaliate? What do you think?
Well, I think, is there a video on that?
There's not video of that key moment.
I will tell you that,
And as usual, the police don't say anything, just she didn't follow order, period. The police don't, they're just mad at you for asking the question, they don't try to explain it.
I'm, obviously very familiar with Barbara. If you've been in the New England Police Department, you have to be. What I will tell you about Barbara is I don't necessarily always agree with what she's saying, but I respect her because for 25 years, more than that, she's been going at it, and she's had the same message, and she's there, and she's committed. I will tell you, sometimes she gets a little bit animated, a little bit too animated, which kind of pumps up the people around her, and that becomes a little bit of an issue for the police if they're trying to. If they're trying to handle an issue that...
Right, so you're the police, and this case got away from the police.
Right.
They were trying to figure out, scrambling who this group was. Nobody knew about these Proud Boys. They finally found a little bit beforehand. And Proud Boys is a violent group, and they sparked violence, but on this particular day, they did not.
Right. And
these kids were even not really part of the Proud Boys. They're trying to find out about them.
Yeah.
So the police appropriately ushered them to safety.
Yeah.
And the protesters against that much bigger crowd failed, even though they tried very hard to keep all the people on their side nonviolent. That's also a challenge if someone comes from out of town with their bandanas wants to commit violence. So I don't think it's fair to criticize the police for trying to protect the Proud Boys but I'm concerned, and I don't know enough here.
Right.
I'm concerned because I've seen in other cases where they feel legitimately like they have to create order, but then they go this extra step of always just slapping these arrests. It's always we have to arrest, and that's what I'm wondering. Did that happen here or not?
Like I said, I don't know. I would have to know more about it. But with regard to those cases, what's a little bit different from the reporter is that when you're dealing, these guys are outnumbered. Don't forget, they're down there, and there's a large group of people. There's a small deployment of police officers trying to maintain order. If there is somebody that's becoming animated, they feel they're being aggressive, then what they would do, their training dictates for them to pull that person out of the crowd and make an arrest or remove them from the demonstration.
Do they have to make an arrest? They can't pull someone to the side?
Like I just said to Harry, you never have to make an arrest.
So she wasn't violent. There's no allegation she hit anybody. Right. The allegation, she said she was not getting in the way. They said she didn't move fast enough from being in the way.
So here's the thing. Do you have to make an arrest? Your discretion could always be employed, right? So sometimes we pull somebody out of the mix, and we pull them around the corner, and we say, listen, get out of here, only for that person to show back up in the middle, and now we're spinning our wheels. We're doing the same thing over and over.
And then being distracted from what you need to do to keep people safe.
So sometimes making the arrest is a sure way to pull this person out of the mix to make sure that we're definitely not dealing with that element again. Right,
65-year-old nonviolent woman.
Right, but then listen. Then you get into the point where can you go back, and say, listen, at the end of the day, half hour later, it's we're going to release you. Go ahead. But now you also run the fact that the officer is probably saying to himself, listen, I had this person in handcuffs in the back of a police car. I told them they were under arrest. Am I exposed for liability here?
And these officers always feel like, aren't they getting this message you used to try to impart to people that you don't always have to arrest people? It's not the first resort. I think that
they do. I think our New Haven police.
Boy, I'm not seeing it, John.
I think that they're dealing with situations where a lot of they can't take a lot of time to really view this whole situation in its entirety.
Right. So the training is not. But is their training been? Don't always be thinking automatically of arrests.
I can tell you the way we trained, and I'm sure it's the same. It's not necessarily an arrest. It's how are we going to get to our objective? What are we trying to do?
Boy, when I talk to officers, like when they arrested our photographer, I was told that's the way it works. We decided using the way, boom, you have to arrest the 65-year-old nonviolent man who for 5 seconds got waved in by a cop to a situation and for 5 seconds
Well,
couldn't hear the
I
person.
said, I can't. What that officer, what the officer on the scene was telling them, why they feel they have to make.
That's their training, and that's their supervisor who said the same thing and just got promoted to run New Hallville.
Right. So I would say I wasn't trained that way. I don't remember being trained. I remember my training officers telling me that there is always an end game. An arrest is and there are certain, listen, domestic violence, there's DUIs, there's people when there's personal injury, but low-level misdemeanors, breach of peace, disorderly conduct. I mean, I ran the bar detail for 4 years straight. Believe me,
That's
we
a tough
didn't
one.
make, yeah, we didn't
If you
make
run the
every
bar
arrest.
detail, you earned your chops. Now, the other controversy involving Barbara Fair is that while Dean Esserman was the chief, he invited the community into Comstat. And it got to be kind of like a show. I kind of dug it on balance because people learned what the police do. But Comstat's that time every week where district managers come in and some of the other cops, and they talk about what's going on in their district the last week, what's coming up, how we're going to strategies to fight crime. Esserman said, I want the community to see what we do and also join the conversation. So we'd have 100 people in that room, including people who work with like kids in crisis, neighborhood people. And they found out what the cops were up with, and they would sometimes contribute information. The cops said, this is dangerous because we can't ever let people know what we're working on. Never once had anyone cited ever a case where anything was brought up in Comstat when people were there that endangered anybody.
Oh, I could bring up. Bring up a few. Absolutely. I won't mention it by name, but I could surely bring up at least a half a dozen.
Where something you weren't able to arrest somebody?
Absolutely.
Okay,
where information was taken from somebody who we invited into the meeting, brought directly out to the suspect we were investigating. There's no.
So what was done about that? Was the personnel?
They were ejected from the meeting, absolutely, and we talked to their supervisor. I won't tell you the agency. There's been a few different agencies, and that person was disciplined.
I can think of one.
Yeah.
So then Barbara Fair came during this controversy, which is actually some session when the police chief was out of the country and Archie Generoso was in charge and couldn't talk to the public about a very upsetting video of a young girl being slammed to the ground. So for a whole week, the police weren't talking to the public on all these demonstrations. And Barbara Fair then came to Comstat to talk about the incident and speak up. And it made the police feel very uncomfortable because she's always attacking them. So the chief asked her to leave. She went and she said, okay, I'm closing this down to the public, which really had an interesting challenge for the police because how are you going to do the work if someone, you always have someone in the public who's going to challenge how you're doing it if you're going to be invited into these meetings. I always kind of felt like I was there with their permission, and I was going to follow extra rules to protect them because I got to be there. But not everybody has the same idea. She said it's a public meeting. But then while everyone was kicked out, including the reporters, Reverend Boise Kimber, who's a politically influential pastor, who's a friend of the chief, was then allowed upstairs.
Right.
So that was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So she actually went to federal court. So Esserman's long gone. I understand that it's a little different vibe at the Comstat now. It's not this big community meeting, although they do try to let some people in. And it's a lot shorter. It's not a show.
I would take. But go ahead. I don't think it was a community meeting as much as it was a meeting to feed his ego with having all the people in there. To be quite honest with you.
But there are a lot of things that happen when someone has an ego, but also might have an interesting idea.
Right, but
because I heard a lot of support. A lot of people in the community felt a lot more support for the. If he took out the ego parts of that meeting, they were an hour shorter. There was a lot of good stuff done.
I'll tell you this: ran those meetings, been in those meetings. The meeting gets too big, it's worthless.
Totally right.
When you invite too many people in,
it's
worthless.
And
when you put too many people out there who you got to watch what you're saying, the officers can't. Now, the exchange of information that the officers need to have is futile. It's a futile effort. They can't do it.
So what would you do? Would you have known from the public there? Would you still allow reporters to come in? It was very useful for reporters to know, as long as the reporters followed the rules and didn't violate any confidential information. So that's tricky. Because reporters got to be able...
A separate meeting with the community, with reporters. Call that something else, Comstat should be uniformed personnel with an exchange of ideas. It's not that we're putting people on the outside of what we're doing, but there are certain things that are law enforcement sensitive. There are a lot of things that are in there that are not fact.
But you know what helped me for a reporter? Help me tell good stories about the department. Because there's ways that, because they don't think like reporters, I would say, hey, domestic violence, I just saw that this department was the other person and did this really interesting idea of how you save someone's life. And all of a sudden you got a story out of that. Like again, I think reporters had to agree that you weren't ever going to make someone look bored, to make them feel they can't speak openly, that you're never going to publish anything from those meetings without someone's permission. I think that was a very good rule. There was a reporter who violated that and got kicked out. I actually agreed with that.
You're always going to violate that. That's the problem, is that you can't control the information in there. And they're really...
But you often take the other position saying try to build that trust with the reporters. So
absolutely, but I'm saying why not have another meeting where you can actually... In other words, don't have a law enforcement meeting where we invite the community and the press. Let's have a community and press meeting, and if there are members from the department that want to sit in, that's fine too. But you can't strip the police officers from law enforcement sensitive intelligence meetings, because that's what they need to do their jobs.
John Valleca, former assistant police chief of the city, and now the current sergeant at arms for the state senate, Harry Drost, station manager here at Dateline New Haven, 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org and WNHH radio. John, what's going on in the state senate? We haven't had a budget for a month. They're supposed to have a month ago. They're having special sessions. You were there last night.
Right. Yeah.
How late were you there?
8:30 here, there.
And so what they did is they didn't pass a budget, but they approved a deal with the state labor unions for
They
concessions.
overrode a veto for the.
Oh, that was yesterday. It wasn't the labor vote yesterday?
No, the labor vote in the House yesterday.
Okay.
Going back.
So they overrode a veto. What did you think? You come from East Haven. They cited that the governor vetoed a law that was going to strike down, I guess, part of this affordable housing law that makes the suburbs allow people to build housing for the poor. Yeah. Because these towns tried to keep out affordable housing. The town said this was misused because the trailer park's not being counted in the formula. Other people say trailer parks shouldn't count as affordable housing. So the suburbs basically beat the governor last night. Well, I think what did you think?
There were some good. It was a good debate. I mean, both sides.
It was. There were really interesting arguments on both sides. People see it so differently. But you're kind of in the middle because
Gary Winfield stood up and he made a great case for compartmentalizing low-income housing and keeping people in certain areas and keeping them unemployed.
And that you shouldn't.
And you shouldn't do that. And then Senator Schlossberg out of Milford made the case where, listen, this law is being abused essentially, and we need to do something to stop that. So I think it probably needs a little bit more work. I think they're probably going to work on something else to it maybe next year. But I think it made a lot of sense what they did last night, and it narrowly passed by 24 votes.
So any thoughts on that, Harry?
So he made a case for having ghettos?
No. He's saying for not having ghettos.
No, he's saying that's what the law does.
He was with the governor saying that they shouldn't weaken this law that the suburbs fought for generations and then tried to undo because they don't want poor people and black people in their towns.
Poor people and black people. So black and brown, right?
Yeah, black and brown.
I feel like I just got a Norma burst here.
Yeah.
Because
well, it's a little unclear because in fact,
right?
it's interesting. Hispanic populations do seem to grow in those towns with less problem than the black. I don't know why that is. Do you think it's because more Latinos pass as white, or
no? They have.
I don't mean that as a joke.
No. They have a submissive nature, right? So a lot of Hispanics don't want to be seen, so they just try to stay out of the way of trouble, and it's not just the immigrant population either. It's if you look at the Hispanic culture, they're submissive in a way that and I've been complaining about it actually because we don't have any leaders who will stand up and fight the good fight, but and so we have people, and I know you didn't do it intentionally, but you have people who just make it a black and white issue all the time.
You see, I'm not sure I see it as a brown issue or not. Is it? Are they trying to keep out brown people too? Maybe they are.
Of course they are. It's just that the squeaky wheel gets the oil, and we don't squeak enough.
That's a fair point. And then they also this session, one thing that Gary Winfield from New Haven, not Holder anymore, State Senator, did get passed was limits on solitary confinement. They're not going to use it for people under 18, and for other people, they're going to monitor it more so that if people care about this issue, they can see if it's being abused. It was interesting to me, and people say it has been abused, because I always feel for the correction guards, because they have tough situations there. They're understaffed, apparently, and they don't see other good solutions. But it's interesting. Connecticut News Junkie, when they wrote about this, the guards spoke up. Someone wrote in, "This is liberal nonsense. A corrections officer, the younger population is the toughest to deal with. Lumping all inmates into the same band with those with mental illness is ludicrous. Sometimes they have issues severe enough to warrant not being the general population. They have to protect the other inmates and protect the and then another person wrote, why do you think they have solitary confinement? The person cannot get along with someone else. Someone might get killed." But then other people say, but it's been so abused. You have people spending months. It makes them crazy. It destroys their lives and becomes an excuse for real dealing with problems in prison. Who's right?
I think it's like anything else. It's a system that could be effective if it's not manipulated.
Was it good to have this new rule? Should they ban it for under people 18?
I think so, yeah.
What about the guards who say, what about these unruly 17 and 16-year-old people who are causing havoc?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if solitary confinement is going to be the answer there. I understand their plight, but that's a little...
So I'm wondering if it should be Harry Droz's answer, just be liberal and spend a lot more money. Should we just hire more guards so that we can give them the tools to be able to run a safer prison?
Well, I think, we should hire more guards.
We should deport them.
Spend money.
Instead of solitary confinement, you want deportation.
Let them serve their time, then deport them. But no, I think first off, solitary confinement for me sounds like a vacation.
Oh God, no, Harry. You know they get locked in this little room, and people do go crazy. They go absolutely crazy when you're there a long time.
And some of them will find their censor.
Yeah. But you know that's true, Harry. You know that
I know.
they consider this torture under additional rules.
And
And so on. Yeah.
I'm joking, but I do think there should be more guards because, you know, when you have people falling through the cracks, some of them actually really do fall through the cracks because there isn't enough people around. You know, and it can be dangerous in those situations.
So, you know, we did reach some points of agreement here, despite our very different outlooks here on Dateline New Haven, John Valeka, Harry Droz. We agreed that the immigration laws need to be changed, even if we disagree about how to carry them out. We agreed that correction officers need more help to run their prisons better so that they wouldn't feel the need to put so many people in solitary confinement. We'll keep the conversation going. We should leave the lady alone. All right.
Leave the lady alone.
So not bad. We had some agreement, and it's great that we also don't agree on everything. I want to thank you so much for joining us today. I love it when John Valeka comes into the studio here at Dateline New Haven. Our resident policing expert, John Valeka, and Harry Droz, our station manager and bravest man in New Haven, friend of Donald Trump, best buddy. Thanks for joining us on Dateline New Haven. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience, performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free, from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. Now, we know what it's like to be free. We just got to remember to book our flight. Book your flight with us all day and all night long here at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.